As a nation, Scotland is gifted with majestic mountains and lochs, alluring islands and vibrant cities. It's a land of ancient castles and modern infrastructure, with a proud history and a rich culture. And in surveys, Scotland has been voted the most beautiful country in the world. Yet for all of this, Scotland is nowhere near as well known as it should be. Scotland may be a beautiful nation, it may be a culturally rich and vibrant nation, yet it is not an independent nation. And the everyday reality of this means that it does not have the same level of international recognition that similarly sized and smaller independent nations enjoy. As part of the United Kingdom, Scotland lives in the shadow of its larger neighbour England. The situation is further compounded by the fact that England and the United Kingdom are, to the world at large, largely synonymous. Because of this, international recognition of England as a name and a brand remains strong. The same cannot be said for Scotland, however. A traveller from Scotland will time and time again find him or herself having to explain to all and sundry that no, Scotland isn't just a part of England, and no, they are not English. It all becomes so tiresome. So why are things this way? Why, after 3 centuries of union, does England continue to be widely known internationally, whereas Scotland is not? After all, England is a part of the United Kingdom, just as Scotland is. Well, firstly, with a population of 56.2 million, England currently has over 10 times the number of people that Scotland has. And secondly, Great Britain was never truly designed to be a separate and distinct entity from England. The British state was, from day one, essentially an English state. Take for example the Houses of Parliament and their historic traditions. The Westminster Parliament that you see today is essentially the same Parliament that started life in 1295, over 400 years before the Treaty of Union. Its historic traditions and procedures date from long before 1707. For example, the tradition that each sitting of the House begins with prayers, well, that can be traced back as long ago as 1558. Or take Black Rod, the usher who summons the House of Commons to the state opening of Parliament. Well, this post dates from as far back as 1522, with the office itself dating back to 1350. When the supposedly new Parliament came into being in May 1707, it was not even considered necessary to hold a new general election. This was despite the fact that the electoral map of Scotland had been substantially redrawn. Furthermore, although Scotland's population at the time was 20% the size of England's, it was only awarded 45 MPs, compared with England's 513. Essentially, there were so few Scots in Westminster that they were barely noticeable, and England's Parliament simply continued on as if little had changed. International treaties that had been concluded by England prior to the Union were considered to remain binding, whereas those signed by Scotland were not. The Anglo-Portuguese Treaty of 1373, for example, is still in force today, and is in fact the oldest active treaty in the world. And even to this day, the United Kingdom's international agreements with other states are prefixed Anglo. Under the Treaty of Union, it was specified that Scotland would harmonise with England, and not vice versa. Scotland had to adopt England's laws in a whole raft of areas, including the regulation of trade, customs and excise, coinage and weights and measures. The reality of this newly created state of Great Britain meant little in England. Its capital city continued to be the hub of political and economic decisions, and furthermore, it remained the home of its head of state. Great Britain was not so much a new state as it was the continuance of the English state with a nameplate change. In the House of Commons in 1889, Dr. Gavin Clark, Liberal MP for Caithness, noted the following during his motion calling for Scottish Home Rule. An attempt is made here to ignore Scotch nationality. We hear of the English government, and the minister is not called to order for the expression. Why, only the other day the Secretary of War spoke of the English troops he was sending to Egypt, the Scottish borderers. As the old expression goes, the more things change, the more they stay the same. In truth, a lot has actually changed since 1707. There are now parliaments in Scotland and Wales, and an assembly in Northern Ireland. Yet devolution also serves to highlight that the UK is a faux union. There is no English devolved parliament, save that of Westminster. Nor is there a Secretary of State for England in the same way as there are Secretaries of State for Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. There are also inequalities among the devolved nations themselves. Whilst Wales's Parliament is broadly similar in scope to Scotland's, it is Northern Ireland's Assembly that is the most powerful. It has its own civil service. It is 3 times the powers that Scotland has, and it gets to remain in the European single market. It has the legal right to choose its own constitutional destiny enshrined by international treaty, and the right to hold a referendum every 7 years after the first one. Yet it is England's constitutional position that truly stands apart from that of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. Sure, it doesn't have a devolved parliament, yet it doesn't need a devolved parliament. Westminster is its parliament. It always has been. It's been around for over 700 years and has thus spent less than half of its existence as the Parliament of the United Kingdom. And with 86% of MPs in Westminster being English MPs, what England wants, England gets. On closer inspection, England appears to be something of a colonising nation, with Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland being its colonies.